This video is going to stir some people up, so I'm going to start off right away, making it clear I am not saying that therapy isn't helpful. So if you're already getting triggered or angry because you love your therapist or you are a therapist, you can have your protector system stand down. I am not challenging that. I'm here to talk about when therapy hurts instead of helps. I'm Michelle Baker, and I have my master's in counseling and art therapy. I worked as a therapist for years before developing my art as a soul language method and helping women use art to uncover their purpose later in life. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of women over the past decade of being a healer and a guide, and I have seen these situations firsthand where someone is working with a therapist and there's more harm being done than good. And first of all, what we need to talk about is that, like any job, some people are good at it and some people are not. So, not all therapists are created equal. Not all programs that train people to become therapists are created equal. I was really lucky and I went to an experiential school where on the very first week they were like, go start practicing. So, before we ever learned any theory or anything else, they had us really listening and attuning to people so that we had the embodied experience throughout the entire 3-year master's program. Other programs are shorter, and people aren't actually working with other people in a therapeutic relationship until they get to the end and they do their internship. Otherwise, they spend all their time learning and thinking about things and understanding theory, but not actually in the embodied practice of what it's like to attune to someone and be present with them. Beyond that, there's also the need when you are a therapist or a healer to be able to observe yourself and be able to notice what people bring up for you, whether that be triggers or projections. And again, some people are more qualified to be able to do this, and some people are more likely to get trapped in a trigger or a projection that they're not aware of. So across the board, like any other profession, there are some people that are not going to be as good of therapists as other people. And that's just the way that it works. The first way in which therapy can be more harmful than helpful, I witnessed just a few weeks ago on one of my calls. Somebody that's in my program also is working with a therapist. And when we were talking about her art, she had a really hard time not breaking down crying because she and her therapist had just decided that her mom was a narcissist and that she had done all these things to her. And what I saw was that this woman was hardly able to maintain herself because of the narrative that had been constructed around her mom being a narcissist. A diagnosis can be very helpful for people to understand themselves, to get services. But this situation is diagnosing somebody that the therapist is not working with, probably has never met the client's mother, and giving them a diagnosis, which may or may not be accurate. And then furthermore, leaving a narrative for the client about how she was the victim of that narcissistic mother. And it was so strong for this person that she was in tears and hardly able to discuss what was relevant and what we were actually focused on in my program, because the narrative was so detrimental to her state of being. She was so wrapped up in what had happened to her that the narrative was detrimental to her ability to function and stay in her power. It instead was sweeping her into this victim role that was not helping her to function in her life or to overcome the experience that she had with her mother years and years and years ago. The second way that therapy can be more harmful than helpful is a lack of ability to work with the mind and the mind's resistance. I can speak to this because I did not learn about mind resistance when I was in therapy, and I even had the advantage of going to a mindfulness program where we were required to meditate during our 3-year master's program. And I still didn't learn how to call out the mind or the mind's resistance. This is really problematic because when we want to do deeper healing work, the mind will always throw up resistance. It will throw up big, fat walls trying to keep people from getting in touch with places within the body and within the emotional realm that the mind is afraid to go, and even getting access to techniques or tools that could be helping them. The mind will come in and shut it down. And not having any tool or awareness of this happening or what to do about it is really detrimental, because instead of working with the resistance and calling it out, the therapist is inadvertently fueling the fire for that resistance and solidifying the walls that the mind has put up that are really not in the client's best interest at all. The third way that therapy can be more harmful than helpful is worshiping emotions. Emotions are an important part of our inner world experience, but they are not the end all be all. In fact, you can test this out for yourself. If you just imagine somebody that makes you super angry, you will get angry. You will feel it in your body. So anything that we think, any thought or any narrative that we have can evoke emotions in us. So by worshiping emotions, we are inherently worshiping the mind and anything that the mind wants to tell us. So it is important to be aware of what is arising, but it is not the navigation tool for where to go in therapeutic work. Honestly, I learned this the most strongly when I became a mom, because I was a therapist and I was a mom. And so I thought that my daughter's emotions were the most important thing. I needed to make her happy. If she was upset, I needed to do something about it. But it was only through deeper exploration and spiritual work that I came to understand that what my daughter needs is good, strong boundaries, and that her emotions are not in charge. Emotions are never supposed to be in charge, because then whoever has the strongest emotion is the one that's controlling the room and the environment. And that often looks like the person who's the most angry, or the person that's the most upset, or the most sad. And that isn't the place that we want everybody's energy to get pulled towards. Another way that therapy can be more harmful than helpful is the idea of safety. This is really common now in therapy for people to say, I don't feel safe. He's not a safe person to me. And this is problematic, because when we are speaking about emotional safety, we are actually putting the responsibility on other people to be something for us. It's taking us out of our own empowerment, and it's confusing what safety is really about. Safety is whether or not you are in any harm's way. When somebody is rude or doesn't treat you exactly the way you want to be treated, or doesn't speak to you, or even triggers you, that doesn't mean that they're not safe. But there's so much fear wrapped up in the therapy field that everybody's afraid of triggering somebody and being not safe. But the truth is that we have ownership over our own safety. If I am not in any physical danger, and somebody says something to me that's triggering me, that's actually mine to deal with. And I can't put it on you and say that it's your fault that you have said something to me that's triggered me and are therefore not safe. You can't actually make me unsafe by anything that you say or do. It doesn't mean that I want to be around you. It doesn't mean that I might not set a boundary, but there's a difference between something being not fun and wanting to say no or set a boundary. That's completely different than the idea that I'm not safe. And by saying I'm not safe, by having that be a common idea in the therapeutic relationship, what we are doing is we are placing people in a disempowered state in which they believe that their safety is outside of them. And that is not actually the case. And it's not where empowerment comes from. I have learned these things over a decade of being in therapeutic work and helping people to heal and up-level their lives. If you're still here, then you might be resonating with what I do. And if that's the case, I would like to invite you to my free Unlock Your Purpose challenge, where I will go deeper into the mind and the way that it blocks you from your purpose, and how we use art to bypass the mind to reveal the deeper soul wisdom that is guiding you forward towards your empowerment and your purpose. If you are interested in that, I will put a link to it below this video. And while you're there, if you can give it a like or leave it a comment, that helps this content reach more and more people.